So Ashes of Creation, one of the most polarizing MMOs right now, just had its early access launch on Steam, and after about 40 hours or so of gameplay, I'm ready to share my thoughts on the game. Real quick though, if you're into MMOs, be sure to sub to the channel and follow me on my main platform, Twitch. I'm streaming MMO content daily over there. Also be sure to drop a like on the video. It really does help push the algo. Okay, so back to the main point of the video. Let's start with some surface level information first. Despite the early access launch label, Ashes is in, I believe it's 9th or so year of development and is still in its alpha testing phase. The game can be purchased for around $50 on Steam, which gets you full access to the game and your first 30 days of sub time when the game eventually releases. Ashes is a sub to play game, by the way, when it does officially launch. As I'm sure you can imagine, a huge point of contention is not only the sales and pricing of this game, but also the amount of time it's been under development. For me, the whole how long has it taken them to get to this point stuff doesn't really bother me as much as it does others, considering my view on the matter is that this is a game started by one guy, an MMO gamer with a lot of money, with zero experience in actually building one or even running a video game company, that decided he was going to make his own game, frustrated by what was out there. It went from being a Kickstarter game to the game we have today, a game largely funded by the owner Steven himself, which I've heard he's nearly $100 million in now. Not sure if that's true or not, along with the money it's raised from its supporters and player base. Considering most MMOs being developed by established, experienced companies with full funding take around 7 to 10 years on average, more or less, I personally don't hold Steven to this standard. My buddy Zach told me he was going to make his own MMO. I would expect his game to take a longer time to develop, and I would 100% expect him to learn along the way, making mistakes and changing things around during the process. This is really how I view the Ashes project, a single individual that decided to make his own game and is figuring it out along the way. Being in the 9th year of development, considering this, doesn't seem unreasonable to me personally. If this was Blizzard's next MMO or Riot's next MMO, I would absolutely hold them to a different standard. Riot's MMO, by the way, was announced in 2020 when Ghostcrawler was in charge. They've obviously scrapped the project completely and are starting anew, but all of that would also mean they are technically in their 5th or so year of development too. Pivots, changes, redirects, all of these things are a part of the development process in my eyes, and even if Riot is having to do it, surely a guy with zero experience would as well. At the end of the day, I'm on the side of the fence that believes making an MMO is just not fucking easy. I think if there's anything Ashes has shown us, or shown me at least, it's shown just how difficult it really is to make a good MMO. Also, I think they've shown the pros and cons of open development. I think if Riot's MMO was doing open development in 2020, there'd be a lot more negativity surrounding the game. So let's talk about the actual game experience, shall we? My experience with the game starts with their Alpha 2 launch, which was about a year ago. Then I revisited the game during their Phase 3 of Alpha 2, which was around 3 months ago. This gave me a baseline and timeline to compare my experiences. The first noticeable improvement was the new player experience. They essentially streamlined the entire experience for a new player in a much easier way to help acclimate newbies to the game and give them some direction. This was something that was missing in the previous tests, and I gotta give them a huge W for doing this, or improving this. Giving a brand new player some direction and guidance so they aren't overwhelmed or lost immediately goes a really long way, and I think is mandatory for the first hours, even if you are going for a more older school, less hand-holding type of game, and Ashes has really done a much better job delivering that. This pretty much guides you to around level 9 or so, where players begin to feel the grind. This is one of the areas I think the game needs to work on, because currently you're heavily incentivized to grind mobs in a group for the next 100 plus hours in order to level up and eventually hit level cap. Let me break this down a bit. First off, I think every MMO should be grindy. In fact, I think most of the people who say this or that MMO is too grindy really mean the grind is simply boring. If you like vertical progression MMOs, you're attracted to the progression of your character and you need and want content in the game that allows you to do so. In other words, you want to grind whether you realize it or not. Grinding becomes a major issue when that grind is boring. When the grind is fun, you want to continue grinding. The mob grinding in Ashes is very challenging, and for what it is, I actually really like the design. You have to respect every single mob, whether you're pulling solo or in a large group. This is a very old school concept that a lot of players really like. I think it's great to allow players to group up and grind for hundreds of hours all the way to level cap, but I feel the game needs to offer more optionality when it comes to leveling your characters if you want the journey to take hundreds of hours, which, by the way, is the case for Ashes. This is one of my bigger concerns with the game. There are alternative ways to level. You can gather and craft, for example, but the vast majority will end up grinding mobs in groups because that's where the game more or less leads you to. If there are alternative ways to level as effectively and I just missed it, well, it needs to be more apparent then. ArcheAge did a fantastic job with leveling, granting players good experience in every activity they did. They allowed you to pursue whichever content you wanted to focus on and attached good experience to those systems. I feel like in Ashes, most players will feel like they have to grind mobs after level 10 to hit max, and the fact that it takes you triple-digit hours to do so will ultimately lose a lot of players. Even just more quests that you could do to reach level cap would be a fantastic addition to the game. It would certainly deliver a more classic WoW-like experience option, and well, that's arguably one of the greatest old school MMOs to ever exist. I can 100% see that type of quest design work really well in Ashes, by the way, with how challenging the mobs are and how socially driven the game is, which is another positive aspect of Ashes. Due to the nature of no teleports, challenging mobs, party finders, the world in Ashes does feel very socially driven. For example, players going to areas they want to grind in and looking for groups via chat. You quite literally have to interact with people if you want to progress your characters, so naturally, player-to-player interactions are very prevalent in the game. Shifting gears now, let's talk about my biggest concern with Ashes, which is the overall performance and mob AI or pathing, especially when it comes to the combat. The combat itself is solid. In my personal opinion, I think it's one of the best parts about the game. The problem, though, is that the overall experience of the combat is really diminished because of the jankiness, desynciness, just the overall inconsistency. Not exactly sure what the word is for it, but overall, it just feels broken still. Let me explain. When fighting mobs, the mobs are almost always teleporting, sliding, running around. They're almost always doing something to the point where it's actually very difficult to distinguish whether or not what's happening is the mob desyncing and bugging out or just performing a scripted action. To give an example, I've had mobs just simply disappear into a rock, then come back later and fight us, clipping through things all the time. I've had mobs run around in a circle for some reason, then run up the stairs only to teleport back to the ground. To this day, I still don't even know if I can grapple hook a mob through a fence because sometimes it goes through, sometimes it doesn't. I also don't know if the grapple hook is supposed to pull my target towards me or teleport my target towards me because both happen sometimes at the same time. The fact that I still don't know this is a good representation of the janky inconsistencies. It just does not feel or look polished at all. I have noticed some of the clipping and jankiness in general, even outside of combat, but combat certainly seems to be where it's most seen. I've heard this has something to do with the server gridding, but I'm not sure. If this is an easy thing to fix, then great. But as someone who's ignorant to game development, I would imagine this is not something that's that easy to fix. You know how some games you'll play, whether it's a new game or an old game, and it just feels like everything registers. It just feels really clean and doesn't have any jank. Ashes is very, very far from that right now. And as someone who's, again, ignorant to game development, it's concerning, if I'm being honest. PvP, by the way, it's even worse. We literally couldn't even do a 60-ish, 70-ish man war because of how laggy it became. Now, maybe these two things are separate issues, but regardless, this game really needs to address both to have any shot at succeeding. Now, with that said, overall, the game has for sure improved. Not only the new player experience, but even the performance that I was just being critical on has actually improved since the beginning of alpha. Before, some of that jankiness I mentioned was also very prevalent everywhere, even outside of combat. That jankiness has improved outside of combat and even in combat to a certain degree, so I will give them that. I will definitely give them some credit there. However, it still needs work. It definitely needs a lot of work. It just needs to be better and it needs to be cleaner. That's going to pretty much wrap this one up, guys. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to actually invest all of those hours to see the end game at max level 25. I'm really conflicted on the matter. I thought about doing it, and then I thought, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do this. So why don't you guys let me know in the comment section below if you guys would like me to see it all the way through, hit max level, and experience some of the endgame features, because some of the stuff that is there, like their new fishing update, really does look interesting and looks pretty good. So yeah, let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.